So it's currently the hot thing to play Lucian Nami. They work super well together, they snowball hard, and they don't really have an abundance of bad matchups. I personally have other ADCs that I prefer to play with, but you'll hear no argument from me that Lucian Nami is good. What I am here to get argumentative about is the notion that Electrocute is what makes this combo strong and it's just so amazing. Where I'm in the habit of recording my games, and I could probably insert a supercut of numerous Lucian players and just other solo queue teammates flaming me for being ride or die with Aerie. Ideally interspersed with a few clips of Lucian players trying to dash in and fight engaged supports in melee range only to die and blame my runes. I've previously written up why I don't particularly like Electrocute on Nami, and a lot of it comes down to things other than the keystone itself, such as what the various rune trees give and how domination limits your ability to take what I consider to be optimal runes. I'm not going to retread that in this video. If you're curious, I put a link to the essay in the description and you can read it in your own time. This video is purely about the damage aspect of Electrocute Nami and why I don't think that even from a damage perspective it is worth it. What it comes down to is the fact that Lucian Nami already does insane burst, and the amount that Electrocute and Domination add to it is nothing special. Let's go back to the clip that this video started with. Samira made a pretty critical mistake by not respecting that Lucian Nami were obviously about to hit level 2, and she ate the Lucian Nami special, losing most of her health bar in the blink of an eye. Was this Electrocute Nami or was this Lucian Nami? Before I give any numbers, I want you to briefly look at just how much damage Samira took and have a guess at how much you think Electrocute did here. Oh, and to top things off, Lucian didn't even do full damage here. Samira had bone plating and took about 85 less damage than she otherwise would have done. Okay, ready? Electrocute did a grand total of 33 damage. In total, Lucian Nami did about 465 damage to Samira, so Electrocute added about 10% more burst here, and only did so much relatively because of bone plating. Was Samira a regular ADC that didn't have bone plating, then Electrocute would have added about 6.5% burst here, so to say that it was Electrocute that mattered here is just wrong. If Nami didn't have Electrocute here and her runes did absolutely nothing, it wouldn't have mattered. The lane was won here off of Samira's misstep. She can't walk up to farm, she can't even soak experience, and because this was a semi-coordinated environment, she and Karma get form and dove a few minutes later. And it's not even like Electrocute scales particularly well on Nami. She doesn't build penetration, she doesn't get to stack an awful lot of AP, and the damage that comes from Electrocute tends to come from the base damage gained through leveling, something Nami doesn't get much access to as a support. You pick Electrocute on Nami for the burst early on, but Lucian Nami's burst is already unmatched. We've looked at a concrete example, but let's briefly jump into the... Okay, so here is a spreadsheet. Honestly, ignore the top half of the screen because when I started this, I grabbed the reference data for all of the different ability and rune and champion scalings. I was going to make a complex interactive spreadsheet that could be manipulated to show how little Electrocute does throughout the game. But then I realised, ow, this hurts my head, I hate spreadsheets, let's just stick to when it's the most potent and what it's picked for, the level 2 all-in. People aren't picking Electrocute to deal a little bit of extra damage to a tank in a mid-game front-to-back team fight, so why waste time talking about it? Instead, let's talk about the Lucian Nami special, where she splashes water on him, gives him temporary Suka pistols, he dashes in, double autos, piercing light, double autos again. Lucian's damage in this burst combo is 2 double auto attacks, all 4 of which apply the magic damage from Vigilance, Lucian's new second passive. Piercing light, the proc damage of press the attack, and then the little bit of bonus damage amplification from PTA, which only applies to his 4th auto attack in this trading pattern. I checked the attack that procs PTA does not benefit from the damage amplification, so it's only the 4th. On Nami's side, you've got W, which realistically will probably deal slightly reduced damage since she's going to be bouncing off of Lucian, so the damage will be reduced by about 14%. Or 3 stacks of E, and then Electrocute and Cheap Shot Scorch if she has those runes. Because of how this trading pattern works, 2 stacks of E are used on the first 2 auto attacks from Lucian, and the third is consumed with Piercing Light. Let's also assume for now that Lucian has a Doran's Blade. I'm aware that quite a few ADCs nowadays start with a longsword instead, but that actually gives 2 additional AD, which for the purposes of the experiment lowers the relative amount of damage that Electrocute deals. It's not by much. Look here, if we just update it, take note of these values down here, they are actually lowered, not by much, but I'm just, I'm not ignoring it. I'm just trying to create conditions that are as favourable as possible to the Electrocute Nami case to show you how even in the best case scenario it's just not really worth it. You've got 2 regular auto attacks, 1 of his Light Sling autos, 3 of his Vigilance empowered auto attacks. The reason they're split into 2 different calculations is because one is the flat damage and the other is the bonus AD, is the total AD ratio. You've got a similar thing with Q where you've got the flat damage and then the bonus AD ratio, the PTA damage, and then the slightly increased damage for the final auto attack that applies Light Slinger and also Vigilance. Nami's kit is much simpler. You've got the flat and scaling damage for W and E. The only complexity is if she is bouncing W off of Lucian and then it hits an enemy, in which case it'll do slightly reduced damage. You can see that up here. You'll notice that quite a few of the values are repeated because of the consistency between the influencing factors. But overall, at most, you'll get about 8.5% additional damage compared to the baseline scenario of a very passive airy Nami page, and that's in the best case scenario. It's going to be one where you'll have Nami with double AP from runes, cheap shot, and she had reduced W damage by bouncing it off Lucian. If you start playing with these other factors, because sometimes it does actually happen, for example, it'll be quite rare for a Nami to go with Gathering Storm or Water Walking with Lucian. She's normally going to want to be quite aggressive and go for Scorch, which you can see the damage of down here. And in that scenario, she will have Scorch adding about 2.5% to the base Lucian Nami combo. So realistically, the best case scenario with an Electrocute page versus a realistic airy page is only about 6% extra burst, and then you can consider other factors such as how Nami players quite like to take haste or attack speed in their runes instead of double AP. You can see that like here. So standard AP, doesn't really matter whether or not they've got attack speed or whether they've got haste. Electrocute's just doing less. Sometimes they might take Taste of Blood instead of Cheap Shot because they want to max E, so they don't have access to as good sustain, so sometimes they'll take Cheap Shot, sometimes they'll take Taste of Blood over Cheap Shot. And then at that point, relative to the realistic airy page, you're only about 4 to 5% additional burst. For a pure damage rune, that means you take suboptimal runes overall. So you kind of have to start questioning whether or not it's actually worth it. And this is all without considering that Lucian could just continue to trade after his burst combo, lowering the relative amount of value that you get from Electrocute overall. I don't want to retread points I've made already regarding aspects such as the greater flexibility and overall strength that I believe airy pages allow. Again, link in the description if you want to. This is meant to be about just the damage. I think people need to understand what's probably going on with the perceived strength of Electrocute Nami with Lucian, and I think it's down to the fact that Electrocute has a slight delay before it deals damage. In the trade pattern for Lucian Nami, Electrocute will begin to trigger on either the E-empowered Piercing Light, or when W lands after Lucian has already attacked twice and is currently casting Q. When this happens, it's about the same time Lucian is getting his second double auto attack off and proccing press the attack. So when the damage from Electrocute hits, it's right about the same time as a lot of other damage, so people think it's Electrocute that's the problem. But we know it's not the case. We've got an example here with Samira's HP vanishing, but if we watch it in slow motion, we can see just how little Electrocute's doing, and we know it's only doing 33 damage. I genuinely believe that people overvalue Electrocute and don't realise just how strong Lucian Nami is as a combo to begin with. So please consider how little Electrocute actually deals and just reconsider the runes.